Donald Trump is a symbol of a demise of Western civilization. He represents humanity's last stand against the globalist tyrants who wish to snuff out the very flame of the Enlightenment. Let's talk about it. When even North Korea's judicial system looks better than that of the United States, well, that's when you know for sure 100% that the progressive left are now in charge. The decision to indict Donald Trump in the middle of a presidential campaign on years-old allegations always stunk to high heaven. But now, the decision to find him guilty, well, that stinks even higher still.
Now we've seen the prosecution's case in full against Donald Trump, and it's even more outrageous than we knew. Donald Trump was not afforded due process in this case, not by a long shot. They refused to tell the defendant, who had to answer to criminal charges, what they were charging him with. This is an outrage. This is disgusting. It was done with the cooperation and complicity of Judge Merchan, who is supposedly an independent, fair-minded jurist. It's a lie. It's a lie. No defense attorney in America would disagree that this was an unfair position to put any defendant in, at least if they were being honest and not letting politics drive their analysis. In the first criminal prosecution ever of a sitting U.S. president, ever, over whether he properly documented a payment to a woman claiming that they'd had an affair and she wanted to tell the media in exchange for a non-disclosure agreement. Those are the norms that we crossed, and that was just the beginning.
The outrageous court ruling is symbolic of a demise of Western liberal democracies across the world. The repercussions of this will be felt and echo into generations. The US is cooked. Put a fork in it. And not just the United States, but in the Western world, full stop. As Tucker Carlson said, this is the end of the fairest justice system in the world. Anyone who defends this verdict is a danger to you and your family. Everywhere you look, democracy is under attack. Not from the Chinese, not from the Russians, no. The enemy is not attacking from outside. The enemy is well and truly within. The way the authoritarian left weaponized the justice system in order to punish their political opponents and fortify their own power would even make Stalin blush. Speaking of Stalin, I have to say, the best USSR show trial had nothing on what we have just witnessed today in Manhattan. Overnight, a former president and current presidential candidate was convicted of 34 felony charges by a jury, not of his peers, no, but of his political opponents. He was convicted during an election year, and he was convicted on what at best might be described as a novel legal theory where the underlying alleged crime was never even properly explained. This is the very definition of a show trial. If the United States saw what the United States was doing to the United States would invade the United States to liberate the United States from the tyranny of the United States, savvy? And that's how bad things are now. Let's be honest. If Trump had been a Democrat, none of this would have happened. If Trump had gone along with the globalist narrative, none of this would have happened. If Trump had not stood up for traditional Western values, none of this would have happened. Heck, if Trump had been looting department stores and participating in, as you may recall, mostly peaceful protests and burning down towns and cities, none of this would have happened.
Remember when the old Biden booster network was literally standing in front of a flaming building and saying that the protests, they're mostly peaceful. Remember this image where fiery but mostly peaceful? is what was the thing written at the bottom of a CNN thing, fiery but mostly peaceful protests after police shooting. Well, guess what? Today we are starting to get the bill back from some of these riots, and they are still saying that despite the fact that more than $1 billion worth of damage has happened, they're mostly peaceful.
Nationwide unrest sparked by the police killing of George Floyd could lead to the highest insurance payout of its kind in history. The protests in late spring were mostly peaceful, but damage from looting and arson will cost $1 to $2 billion in claims. That's according to the Insurance Information Institute, and that would eclipse the previous high, the 1992 riots that followed the acquittal of 4 officers in the beating of Rodney King.
It is literally a story about more than $1 billion worth of damage, but you still say mostly peaceful.
Trump was convicted because his very existence is a threat to the power of the Democrats, the deep state, and the shadowy figure lurking inside the Oval Office, that pot plant commonly known as Joe Biden.
But just have a listen to what the president said to a group of teachers yesterday when he recognized an old friend in the crowd.
Guess what? We got a lot to do. You gotta say hi to me. We go back a long way. She was 12, I was 30, but anyway, this woman helped me get an awful lot done. Anyway.
I'm sorry, what? She was 12, I was 30. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. I'm not sure what the worst thing about that whole episode was. I mean, was it Joe Biden making a gag that would make most people think pedo? Which is a pretty dangerous area for any politician to head into. Not the least someone with his, shall we say, penchant for sniffing the hair of young girls, and whose own daughter is believed to have written a diary said to belong to her, in which she talks about taking, quote, not appropriate showers with her father.
Watching the way in which Trump has been persecuted, who in their right mind would now run for office? Who would now be crazy or brave enough to take on the establishment? Who would speak truth to power when they know the price that has to be paid? The problem that we now have, not just in the United States, but right around the Western world, is that civil discourse, basic decency, and the rule of law have been tossed out the window. Ideologically driven woke-tards have for years been intent on dividing citizens in order to win power. That, after all, is the entire objective of identity politics. Lie, divide, and then conquer. When the public sees through the lies, the left manipulate the legal system in order to destroy their political opponents. Normally, such a case would never have been brought against anyone, let alone a former president and favourite to win the presidency in 2024. The prosecutor, Alvin Bragg, was an elected Democrat. He ran for office promising to get Trump. And he was elected with 83% of the vote. In other words, the Democrats didn't even bother to pretend this was anything other than a setup. That's how arrogant they have become.
Alvin Bragg ran for office on a promise to get Trump, a Soros-backed DA who doesn't want to enforce the criminal law against anyone. That's why we were all leaving New York in droves, because of his policies and the policies of his old boss, the old mayor in New York. And this guy promised, if you elect me, I'll get him. Remember this?
When I was in the AG's office, I sued Trump over 100 times for his administration's misconduct and brought a case against the Trump Foundation and held him accountable.
I'm the candidate in the race who has the experience with Donald Trump. I was the chief deputy in the Attorney General's office. We sued the Trump administration over 100 times. I know how to litigate with him. I also led the team that did the Trump Foundation case. So I'm ready to go wherever the facts take me. It'd be hard to argue with the fact that that'd be the most important, most high-profile case And I've seen him up front and seen the lawlessness that he can do.
So I do have a lot of experience with the former president. I think it's important to elect someone who is well prepared to pick up wherever the sitting district attorney leaves off. If brought, would be one of the most consequential cases in the history of local enforcement, and we need someone who's ready on day one.
He should be disbarred.
They don't even bother to hide what they're doing because they don't believe people are motivated enough or perhaps courageous enough to stand up to them. By the time Alvin Bragg was in a position to fulfill his promise of getting Trump, the statute of limitations for falsifying account records, the charge he hoped to get Trump on, had run out. So what did he do? He cooked up another charge, literally stuffing one alleged crime within another alleged crime in order to allege that there had been some sort of crime for which he would bring down Trump. I know it's confusing. So they've achieved their goal. Between now and polling day, the Democrats can now call the Republican presidential candidate a convicted felon. And that's what they wanted all along. And for that, they were prepared to bring the American justice system into disrepute and erode faith. Donald Trump was never a threat to democracy. Donald Trump is, however, a threat to the Democrats and the deep state. And so the Democrats trash democracy to get him, as Alvin Bragg says. And that's what we've seen today. But here's a question. What if this conviction fails to dampen support for Donald Trump? What if the Democrats and the deep state jail Trump, and even that doesn't affect his lead in the polls? What will they do next? Would you really put anything beyond these people now? The political class, whose tentacles stretch to every area of the bureaucracy, have now shown their true colours. They will stop at nothing to cling to power. You wouldn't put it past them to assassinate Trump. You think that's unlikely? Who can say anything is unlikely anymore? In a banana republic, you don't discount anything. And America is now the biggest banana in the world. A line has been crossed. And now, the world we once knew, where we didn't always agree with, but we nevertheless trusted our institutions, is well and truly gone. In some ways, this is our generation's JFK moment. Trump has been assassinated, not with a bullet, but with an outrageous criminal trial. Trump may survive, and I suspect he will thrive, but I guarantee you this: if decent men and women around the Western world don't push back against the progressive left, the world in which we grew up in, a world of equality, rule of law, and freedom, will be gone forever. These are dark times, make no mistake. May God bless America, because the devil sure is doing his best trying to destroy her. And may God bless Australia, because the same demons besetting the USA are at work here too. I do battle with them every single day. It's up to all of us to resist. We are all Donald Trump. Trump 2024. I'm Senator Ralph Babette for the United Australia Party.